What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and our 2019 college football predictions continue with the Kentucky Wildcats, a team that really surprised a lot of people last year, including myself. I did not see this coming. They had a great year, had that big bowl win over Penn State, got to 10 wins. Just a really impressive season, and a lot of people think it was a fluke that this team was good for 1 year. They had some really good players. They're all gone, and this team's going to struggle this year. I disagree. I think Kentucky is going to be pretty good. Maybe not to the level that they were last year, but I still think that this team is going to be pretty solid and very competitive in the SEC heading into this season. You look at the offense, and yes, they lose Benny Snell, but A.J. Rose is a very good running back. He hasn't had a ton of time back there, but when he's played, he's been very productive. I think Terry Wilson's really underrated at the quarterback position, and they have one of the top offensive lines in the SEC. Defensively, yeah, they lost a lot, but they're well coached. I think the front seven will be pretty solid. The back end, the secondary, might be a problem. I think that's the weak spot of this team. But still, this is a team that I think can compete with most of the teams in the SEC. They're going to be in a lot of these games. They're not going to get blown out by hardly anyone, and I think that they could surprise some people again this year. Look at that schedule, or that record. 10-3 last year. 10 wins for Kentucky. It was really impressive. And again, I think they're going to surprise again this year. Not to that extent, but I think they're comfortably a bowl team in 2019. You look at the schedule here. One of the reasons I think they'll have a lot of success is the schedule is not that bad. Non-conference schedule, very weak. Toledo, Eastern Michigan, UT Martin, and Louisville. Louisville, I still don't think is quite ready to compete with Kentucky. They might get there in a couple of years, but I think Kentucky's still clearly the better team. They have that game at home. We'll come back to that later, though. I think they start the season off with a couple of wins. Toledo and Eastern Michigan, I think, are both wins for Kentucky. I think they'll win these games fairly easily. Eastern Michigan is not a bad team. That game could be kind of close for a while, but I think Kentucky will pull away. And then they play Florida at home. Remember, they ended the streak last year, the losing streak to Florida. They were able to beat them on the road. This year, I think this Florida team is poised for some revenge. I think Florida is going to win this game. I think Kentucky is going to probably struggle to slow down that offense with all the receivers, all the weapons that Florida has, and the youth in the secondary for Kentucky by 10 to 14 points. So I like the Gators to get the win there over Kentucky. And then you have, in my opinion, 3 games in a row that are swing games, that are 50-50 games that could go either way. That's Mississippi State on the road, South Carolina on the road, and then Arkansas at home. These games are really going to tell a lot about this Kentucky team, and I think after they go through this stretch, we're going to know if Kentucky is similar to what they were last year, or do they really take a big step back. You start with this game against Mississippi State. It's on the road. They got the Cowbells, tough place to play, but it's a good matchup for Kentucky because Mississippi State's not a team that throws the ball a lot. And again, I think their weakness is going to be the secondary, and I think the defensive line for Mississippi State's going to take a big step back. You got a great offensive line at Kentucky. They should be able to run the football pretty well in this game. It's going to be a tough one. I think, again, it's one that could go either way. But the matchup, I think, really favors Kentucky in this one. That one is definitely going to be one of the best games, I think, of the season for this on this schedule. The next game is against South Carolina on the road. The matchup doesn't really favor Kentucky as much here because you got Jake Bentley, a very solid quarterback. We've seen him have some big games in the past. The game's on the road, tough place to play. And slowing down the South Carolina passing attack, I think, is going to be a challenge. And the front seven for South Carolina should be pretty solid. So I look for them to be able to do a pretty good job against the Kentucky run game. So not as good of a matchup, but Kentucky's had a lot of success against South Carolina in recent years. Even though this game is on the road, I think they'll have a chance. And to me, this is one that also could go either way. And then you got Arkansas at home, a team that we don't really know a whole lot about at this point. And exactly what they're going to look like. I think year 2 is going to be a big improvement for them. I think Ben Hicks is going to be very solid for them at the quarterback position. I think they've got an underrated defense. I think that they are going to surprise some people. They've got a pretty solid front seven. So this is a game that could go either way. The good news for Kentucky is this one's at home, but not a guaranteed win by any means. I think Arkansas, again, is going to really be improved this year, and that should be a fun game to watch there. Then they face Georgia on the road. Remember last year they were playing for the SEC East, and people thought that Kentucky might be able to pull off an upset. They had them at home. They weren't able to do it. and that was their chance. I don't see them beating Georgia this year. I don't think they're very competitive in this game. I just think Georgia's going to be too good this year. It won't be a 50-0 type blowout, but I think Georgia will comfortably win this game by 14 to 20 points, something in that range. Just, again, playing on the road, it's just not a good matchup for Kentucky. I think Georgia will win that game. So I've got them losing to Florida and Georgia for sure. But the rest of the schedule, definitely manageable for Kentucky, and they're going to pull off some wins. The next game is against Missouri. This game's at home for Kentucky. Missouri, going to be an interesting team with Kelly Bryant at quarterback. Again, the matchup I think is pretty good. I don't think Missouri is going to be throwing it all over the field like they did with Drew Lock. I remember last year's game, that crazy ending. We'll see if it happens again this year. But, yeah, this is going to be a really good matchup, in my opinion, one that could go either way. Good news for Kentucky is they get it at home. But you know Missouri is going to really want some revenge after the way that game ended last year. So that'll be a tough one. Tennessee is at home. It'll be Kentucky wanting the revenge this time after they were kind of shocked last year by Tennessee. Tennessee played probably their best game of the year. This time, Kentucky's at home. Again, they're going to be wanting revenge. Tennessee utilizes their weapons at receiver, and they start getting a little bit more aggressive throwing the football. This is not a great matchup for Kentucky, and maybe you saw that a little bit last year. So this, to me, yes, they're at home, but it's a game that could go either way. Going to be a tough matchup, I think, for the Wildcats. The next game is against Vanderbilt on the road. Another tough matchup. I think this Vanderbilt offense is going to be really good. They've got weapons at tight end, at receiver, so I look for them to have some success offensively. But can they slow down this Kentucky offense and this Kentucky rushing attack? That's going to be another question, and I don't really know if they're going to be able to do that. I think Kentucky should have a real opportunity to win this game, but it will not be easy. And again, this is a game that I think could go either way. So we're talking about 6 swing games. Mississippi State, South Carolina, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. They're not going to win all 6 of those games, and they're not going to lose all 6 of those games. But you could see how this team could have a 9-3 type season, or potentially a 6-6 type season. It's really tough to figure out what this Kentucky team is going to be with so many games that could go either way. But I do like them to beat UT Martin, and I do like them to beat Louisville. I mentioned that at the beginning of the video. I don't think that the Cardinals are quite ready to take on this challenge. It's a rivalry game, so you never know. But year one under Scott Satterfield, I don't think they're quite going to be able to win this one, especially on the road. So, yeah, I like Kentucky to win that game. That means we've got 4 wins. Feel pretty good about 4 games that they're going to win, and we have 2 games that we feel pretty confident that they're going to lose. Then you have 6 more games here that you have to decide. If they split these 6 games, they would go 7-5. I think they might actually do a little bit better than that. I think this team could get to 8-4. I really just like what they've got in the front 7, especially the linebackers on defense, and I really like their offense. I think they're going to surprise some people and be much more explosive on that side of the ball and more balanced than they were last year. I like them to get these wins at home. Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, they get all those games at home. I'm going to say they win all 3 of them, and then they also go on the road and pull off a win, maybe against Mississippi State. I think that's the best matchup for them. Vanderbilt's probably the weakest team, so maybe it's Mississippi State, maybe it's Vanderbilt. I'll say they lose to South Carolina, and then again, the 4th loss comes either on the road at Mississippi State or on the road at Vanderbilt. That's pretty tough to call, but we're not trying to focus on the individual games. We're really just trying to focus on the overall record, and I think they're going to go 8-4. I think that'll surprise some people this year. I think most people think Kentucky is going to be 6-6 or 7-5 and kind of drop off from where they were last year. But I think this team is capable of going 8-4 and having a very solid season and maybe being the 3rd best team in the SEC East, potentially. That's what I am predicting. So that's my prediction for this Kentucky team, a team that I seem to like. The more I look at them, the more I research this team and look into them, the more confident I am in them. Because when I first started, when the season ended last year, I thought, Kentucky's probably going to drop off. They'll be 6-6 maybe. But now I've changed a little bit, and I think this team could go 8-4. I'd love to know what you think about Kentucky. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports YouTube channel.